Using a sponge for chipping is nothing new, but using one to create realistic scratches is a different story. So today, that's exactly what I'll be showing you. This Orks axe will be the perfect canvas for it. Before we even touch the sponge though, I am going to apply a couple of washes over the metallics. I am simply using some reddish brown tones, diluted with at least 2 parts water to 1 part paint. This isn't just to shift the metallics towards a rustier color, it is also going to make our scratches stand out much more. Part of that comes from increasing the value contrast by making the underlying metallic darker, allowing for the brighter scratches to pop. But there is another kind of contrast at play here as well. You see, while these acrylic washes won't completely remove the metallic shine, they will dull it down quite a bit. That means the fresh scratches we'll add later will catch the light much more strongly, creating an extra layer of contrast that makes them feel much more convincing than if we had simply painted them over a darker metallic. Once the axe is ready, it is time to move on to the sponge. I will tear off a small piece and even pull at it with a little pair of tweezers to break up any repeating patterns. That way, the scratches will look more random and natural. Now, whether you are creating scratches or simply stippling, one thing to always keep in mind is not to overload the sponge with paint. After picking some up, dab most of it off until the marks become small and sparse. Also, be careful not to press down too hard. Even if the first few marks look fine, a sponge that absorbed too much paint can suddenly release it all at once as soon as you apply a bit more pressure. Creating the scratches is actually very simple. Instead of tapping the sponge onto the surface, lightly drag it across it. Ideally, you only want the sponge to barely graze the model. This will create much thinner and convincing lines. But the harder you press, the thicker they'll become. So before committing to your miniature, spend a few seconds testing the motion on a spare surface. Remember also to drag the sponge in the same direction that the weapon would naturally scrape or strike. Random scratches can work, but giving them a sense of direction makes the work look much more believable. One last thing to remember when using this technique is that less is always more. If the randomness of the sponge leaves a few areas untouched, resist the temptation to fill every gap. Those little inconsistencies are exactly what makes the effect believable. If you keep going back over the same area, you will eventually lose the scratches altogether and end up covering the entire surface in bright metallic paint. Here is another example. In this case, the weapon was heavily rusted through the use of pigments. Again, creating that matte versus shiny contrast I talked about before, but even more pronounced. If you would like to learn how I painted the muscles on this orc, you're in luck. This week will be actually a double upload, so make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to don't miss out. In the meantime, if you haven't seen them already, I would recommend checking out my previous tutorials, where I show you how to paint smooth Space Marine armor using nothing more than a makeup sponge, as well as an easy recess shading trick that lets the paint do most of the work for you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.